episode of We're Moving to Europe, a podcast for Americans who are curious and or serious about relocating somewhere on the European continent. Today's topic is understanding the sometimes subtle but very important differences between a vacation and a scouting trip. This is critical if you're still trying to decide where to move. And our guest today is the ideal person to talk about this because she's someone who has lived a very international life. Anita Ahiadume has lived in several countries, travels extensively around the globe, and serves an international travel clientele in her role as Director of Operations for Dynasty de la Casa Enterprise and as the founder and CEO of La Casa Travel in Accra, Ghana. Anita, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Casey. I'm so glad to be here.
I am so honored and happy that you agreed to be the first guest. We've known each other for 15 years now since we were both in Austin?
I think so.
Yeah.
So many moons ago.
Yeah. So, and since then you've lived in so many different places and had so many adventures. And so you tell people, where have you lived? Because I know a few, but I don't think I know everywhere that you've actually, all the different countries you've lived in.
Okay. So I was born in Ghana. And so I'm going to tell my age a little bit here. But so left Ghana when I was 3. So that was like 1984. And we moved to Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. And the UAE is what I consider home. And so I was in the UAE, so lived in Sharjah, Ajman, then Dubai. So was there till 2017, then moved to New York City to pursue my dream of being a theater actress. And then 10 years in New York City, then moved to Austin, which is where we met. So Austin for 4, then back to the United Arab Emirates. So back to Dubai for another, I think it was like about 4.5 years, then decided to move to Ghana, which has been a whole new adventure, as you know. So I'm currently based in Ghana at the moment, in Accra, and not sure where life will take me next.
Well, I mean, life takes you a lot of places. Like you travel, you were here in Portugal, it's been a year and a half?
Yes.
Something like that?
Yes. Almost, yes, over a year and a half.
But yeah, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about your personal travels? Yes, please. Love to hear it.
Sure. So I've been traveling a long time. So in my let's say my formative years, my parents made sure that since we didn't grow up on the continent, they wanted us to know that there was more to Africa than what we see on TV. So did Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Zimbabwe. And then once I moved to the States, then of course it was Canada, Jamaica, the Virgin Islands. Then I found the love of my life, which is Italy. So Italy, I've been back to, I think, almost 10 times now, and I'm nowhere near stopping. So in Italy, I've been to, in the north, I've done Milano, Torino, Azignano, Vicenza, Venezia. It just goes on. And then to the east, I've done Ponza, I've done Rome, of course, and Sardinia. Then going south, it's in Apulia, it's been Bari, Napoli, the Amalfi Coast, of course, Capri, and then heading down to Sicily, which I've done about half of the island now, hoping to finish the other half in the next couple of years. So, and then in the Middle East, of course, Oman, Qatar. So it's quite a bit. I like to move around. Oh, and then I think in Europe, we've got Portugal, which I've been to about 3 times now, I think. And then Budapest and, where else have I been? Oh, Spain. I've been to Spain about 5 times now. And we'll probably head back because I'm fascinated with Asturias. So, yeah, Casey, I could go on.
I was going to say, you didn't even mention the UK there.
No, I didn't. I totally didn't, did I? Oh, God.
Yeah, it might be easier to list places where you haven't been. So,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's just, I want to book a vacation just hearing about that. But I mean, and that's part of what you do now, right? I mean, you help people book travel. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, sure. So at La Casa Travel, I help basically curate travel for people going, whether it's for work, whether it's for vacation, family reunion. It doesn't matter why you want to go somewhere, but I can help you get there. And whether you want to do it on a budget, you want to do it fancy, do you want a private jet, you want a helicopter, it all can be done. So that's what I do now.
Sweet. So I know you and I had maybe messaged about this or talked about it before, but you mentioned that you'd seen people come from America who were maybe considering relocating to Ghana.
Yes.
Is that something that's part of your clientele? Do you have experience working with people who were thinking about expatriating to Ghana or other places in Africa?
I do actually, and oddly enough, not from the La Casa travel angle, but because of the Dynasty de La Casa, where we have a hospitality business. So we have a service department and restaurant based here in Ghana, and because of that, I've had guests who have, flown over and they were trying to figure out if Ghana is the place for them. And it's been really interesting to me how different groups of people tackle the same agenda. And it's highlighted for me that some people come on a scouting trip, but they've treated it like vacation. So they haven't actually gotten enough information. So it's really interesting watching people move around a country or even sometimes just a city and assuming they know the country. Also growing up in the UAE, which is like expat central, you see people come and go. And it's unfortunately the ones who go too quickly are the ones who weren't prepared or had a different idea of what life would be in that space. So I've really had a unique vantage point.
And that's what I'm really excited about tapping into, because this is something I've seen it. I see people who move to the heart of the Baisha in Coimbra, which is this very beautiful old medieval thin-walled construction, very noisy. And then they're shocked that it's loud because it's very much one thing to visit that sort of place on vacation and walk around and take in all the architecture. It's another to have to sleep there every night, no matter what's going on in the city. So, and these are things that are applicable, not just, anywhere in the world, Africa,
absolutely,
Europe, anywhere. So do you want to tell us, what do you think makes a success of a trip like that? And how can people set themselves up for success when they're trying to explore a place that they may want to live and not just vacation in?
Okay. I think the first thing that jumped out at me when you asked me this was honesty. Be honest with yourself, because I find a lot of people are a little bit delusional about why they are leaving where they live currently. And by that, I mean, be honest about the type of lifestyle you want to have. Be honest about what actually makes you happy during your day. So for example, I've seen people leave, let's say, New York because, oh my God, the traffic and the subways are so crowded. And then suddenly here they are, they took a job and they're right smack in the middle of Mumbai, which is, triple the amount of people.
Right. Yeah. That's you're just going from the frying pan into the fire at that point.
Exactly. So sometimes a lot of why we are leaving a place actually has a lot to do as to where we are mentally in life at times. So I think we need to start with, being honest with ourselves as to why are we moving? Is it for work? Is it for, more family time? Is it for just a new adventure? Because then once we know why we are leaving, then now we can look at what are our priorities as to where we are moving. And I think for this, I recommend everyone keeping a spreadsheet. Keep a spreadsheet. On the first sheet, I think you need to list down all your expenses and how much you spend on the stuff that's important to you, from your food to your entertainment to your clothing, all of that. Then now create another spreadsheet for the place that you are considering, so that when you arrive there, you need to be really meticulous, because it's not a vacation anymore. You're not there. Yes, you can, chill out in the evening. But even in the evenings, I recommend staying active and really seeing if this city or this country that you're moving to, if it's right for you. Because you need to check out, what is the work situation if you're coming there without a job? How are you going to afford your life? Having 6 months in the bank is not enough. I know some people say, oh, 6 months, it's enough. No, it's not, because God forbid that there's a medical emergency or something. What happens to you? Then are you traveling with your children? Where are they going to school? How much is that schooling going to cost? Maybe you have to wait, depending on the country, you might have to wait to become a resident of that space before your kids are allowed in the public schools, which may or may not be free. Your housing, where are you staying? We're talking about more American travelers here. So maybe where you were, you could afford a 2-bedroom, it was comfy, and it had its, washer, dryer, and all those comforts. Now suddenly you find yourself in the UK with a smaller apartment, maybe double the price of what you were paying, and you've got to walk down the street to use the washer dryer. Is that what you want? How much does your utility cost you? And what are the utility charges? And how often do they change? Because, for example, in Ghana, this year we're projected to have about 3 to 4 increases.
What?
So,
oh my gosh.
Yes. So again, these are you need to be so meticulous, because as much as it's so exciting to move and see a new place and experience a new place, these are the real things that can really, bog you down. And one thing, I definitely came to Ghana not, I took a bit for granted. But when you're moving especially to a country where the infrastructure, and by infrastructure, I don't just mean road systems. I'm talking about governmental infrastructure. I'm talking about healthcare infrastructure, where those things are a little bit more fluid. You need to figure out, is that okay for you? Because, for example, over here, your follow-up with someone needs a follow-up and then some. So do you have that, that time to put on your calendar, hey, I need to call so-and-so to remind him to do XYZ, and then call him again in about 30 minutes because he didn't do that. And then I need to follow up, because if you don't do it, chances are you're not getting what you're going to get. And a big one for me is, how cool are you with corruption and bureaucracy? Because if you come from a city or a place where things, when they tell you, hey, it's going to take 10 days and it actually just takes 10 days or even takes 8, you're used to the system working for you. But if you're moving to a place where the system doesn't work that way, are you okay with that? Because I've seen a lot of Americans come and leave Ghana purely because of something like this.
Oh, I see it here in Portugal. I see people have hissy fits on social media a lot because they don't understand that, the bureaucracy is going to bureaucracy. And it takes time. And this is all information that's known ahead of time. And I think maybe you don't really believe it until you experience it. But you got to start gathering that information and taking it seriously when people tell you the bureaucracy is slow here, or maybe there's lots of errors in the bureaucracy and you're going to have to constantly be fact checking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The infrastructure and the housing situations in particular kind of lead into the whole overall cultural thing. So do you see people maybe glossing over the cultural integration challenges that they are going to face? Or
Definitely. I don't think you can be or understand a culture until you speak the language. And no matter where you are in the world, English might be, especially in expat communities, English might be that base language that everybody reverts to. But until you speak the local language, you are not even going to understand the people who you are living around. So I'll use an example here. I've seen Americans come over here and then start cursing up a storm, sometimes in a joking manner and everything. But in the culture in Ghana, we don't insult each other that easily. It's like basically fighting words. And it's not something that's taken lightly. And people don't realize how much it affects people. For example, I once, with an employee, I made a joke and said something like, we keep working like dogs here, because we've been working really hard and she actually went home and cried about it. Didn't say anything to me.
Oh, no.
And then, yes. And then I found out the next day from another employee who basically said, I think you should apologize because she thought I called her the B word.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh.
Yes. So these are these little cultural things that, we might overlook. It's a figure of speech or whatever, but it's received so differently. Another thing that's interesting over here is we say please more than anybody else in the world. So it's yes, please, no, please. Anything you ask, there's a please in it, even if you're the one asking for it,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, yes, sometimes I've seen American guests get upset, like, stop saying please, da da da. But that's how they're actually directly translating from our local language, one of the local languages, Tree. They're actually, because that's how it's spoken. It's so polite. And especially when you are a visitor, they defer to you in such a, polite manner that they would feel wrong to not speak to you that way.
And that's the sort of thing you can't pick up on unless you speak the language.
Exactly.
I don't know how it is across the rest of Europe, but one of the things I've gotten used to here in Portugal is something similar, which is just a level of courtesy and maybe like old-fashioned formality in the way that people address one another. The utility bill comes to Your Excellency.
Yes.
Excelentissimo.
Oh, wow. Nice. I love that.
The notice from the construction guys working on the apartment downstairs in my building had a notice letting us know that the disruptions were going to be happening and giving everyone in the building their utmost compliments.
Oh, nice.
And they actually put down a real carpet in the elevator to protect it from the construction materials. I was like, what is this? This is very courteous.
Yes.
I had a fender bender, which hopefully my kids aren't listening to this because they'll be like, Mom. It was at a roundabout. And in my defense, it's the roundabout that there's a fender bender there like at least 3 times a week. It's not just me.
I think roundabouts should be banned. Nobody knows how to use a roundabout.
I mean, I kind of love it, except that I rolled forward and tapped this woman's bumper and she got out and I was just expecting for her to just light me up. Not the way she wanted to know, and the way it translates from Portuguese. I'm not going to say it in Portuguese because of my terrible accent, but it was, is the lady injured? A senhora. Is the lady injured? And it seems very formal, but that's just the way you address people here. If you don't know them, like, when the delivery guy calls, he's like, I got a package for you. And no one knows where my building is. So I'm like, oh, is the gentleman downstairs at this address? And sometimes he is, and sometimes he needs more directions. But that's the level of formality that's like a baseline. It's expected. And so if you're, it's just different.
Definitely. I think in the States, we are very informal. You can call your boss by their first name. Whereas over here, if they have a title, let's say if they are Dr. So-and-so, or if they are an attorney, they expect you to call you lawyer so-and-so. Like they really appreciate titles here, and that, and it's part of them creating this social hierarchy and into how they should treat you.
Yeah, and it's important to build, if you want to integrate into the community and build local connections, which is really important, I think. Addressing people correctly and observing the standards of speech and public conduct are super important.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think it's very common for people to get stuck in expat spaces. And I get it. You're missing home. You want to have that connection with someone who understands your culture. But I think it's really important to live outside of expat spaces, especially when you're new to a country. I see it often here. For example, we have an area here called cantonments. Cantonments is where all the embassies and all of these things are. So it's filled with a lot of foreigners. And that's where a lot of people who can afford, that's where they go stay and then claim they know Ghana. Whereas when you're in cantonments, the only Ghanaians you're going to probably encounter are your housekeepers, your security men, everybody who's working for you. You're never going to feel the real vibe of the city. You're never going to eat the real food. all of those things. But I see a lot of people default to, and I get it. I think we're trying to find that safe space, but at the same time, I don't know, maybe I'm a little cruel here, but I feel like you need to rip the Band-Aid off and jump right into the culture. Because the sooner you do it, the better I think your experience is going to be.
Oh, I agree. So, one thing, and I see that with Portugal too. People think they know Portugal because they've been to Lisbon. And then they're shocked. They move somewhere north in the country and they're shocked that it rains all the time. I'm like, yeah, we're on the Atlantic coast.
Exactly.
Yeah, Portugal contains multitudes, just like any country, just like any city.
Yes.
And so, one of the things that I'm trying to do for, my audience and people who are interested in moving to Europe, especially now with the economy being kind of uncertain, I think there's a tendency people want to maybe treat a vacation like a scouting trip or vice versa, in part because of the finances of flying back and forth across the Atlantic. But also Americans just don't get that much time off. But if they're going to focus and they're going to get the most value out of their time scouting a country, let's say realistically, let's say they've got a week or 2 weeks. What are the things that you would recommend that they do with their time? Like what might a day or a couple of days look like for someone doing a really effective scouting trip?
Okay. I think before they travel, they should narrow down some areas in the city they want to move to that they are interested in living in. And I recommend a vacation rental as opposed to a hotel, because I want you to go to the supermarket, see how much food costs. I want you to see how far was that supermarket from where you are roughly. I want you to get on the metro. Don't do it by Uber. Don't, get on the buses. I would definitely want them to try and jump in as much as possible. What does the city seem like at night? Do you feel safe? Because that's a huge one, especially if you are a single person moving, traveling, like moving alone there. It's, did you feel safe? Are there, this is for some, Portugal, I know, has a lot of graffiti, but are some of those tags, are they gang related, for example? Depending on the country, that's something good to know. Because, for example, in Athens, I can think of like one particular area that's known for, Molotov cocktails whenever they're angry at the government. That'll be good to know, not to move right smack in there.
Yeah. Yikes.
Exactly. So you need to narrow down the search a bit, because yes, you can definitely move to a city, and then again, depending what your finances look like, you could actually jump around, change Airbnbs or vacation rentals every month till you find the area that's right for you. Second, you need to set up a meeting with a realtor that can give you a bit more insight into what you actually get for your money there. Because sometimes when you're looking online on websites like Zillow and all of those, everything looks fabulous, but that's not the real thing. Maybe the realtor knows, hey, this building is notorious for not having any services. Your landlord is probably not going to help you, So setting time with a realtor who is familiar with that area is crucial. 4 years ago, my mom was interested in relocating to Castellón, Spain. So we did that trip. We met with different realtors. We moved around the city a bit. And in the end, she just decided, it's a cute city, but it's not the one for me. So it's important to get that insight. How many banks are there? The smaller the city, the less chance you're going to have access to an international bank. So if it's a smaller city, do they deal in cash? How far do you need to go to the ATM? All of these things, because the smaller the city, the less chances it might be as technologically advanced as you would like it to be. So how far do you have to go to get your food? What type of food do you have access to? I see it over here all the time. A lot of Americans asking, do you know where I can get Jiffy corn mix? Or do you know where I can get some grits? And, they miss home, and I get it. You miss home. But these are the things that, as much as you miss them, when you're leaving, you need to just know, hey, I'm not going to be eating these things as often as I would like. It could be a treat that you get maybe once a year. So what can I find that will be closest to grits, for example?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Casey. I feel like I'm talking.
I was going to say, when I'm thinking about, because yeah, for me, getting over here and realizing that I had to pay a lot of places in cash until I got my local bank card set up, it wasn't a huge hassle, but it was different.
Yes.
Because I just, as an American, I wasn't used to carrying cash really for anything. And so now I do. I've told my kids I feel like a little elf in D&D. I've got my little bag with coins in it. And that's just how it's done here. And,
Yes. It's the same in Ghana. It's the exact same. And when you're talking about paying rent in cash, in Ghana, for example, the law is that a landlord can only request 6 months in advance, but most landlords here take 2 years upfront.
What? Wow.
Yes. So, so finding that landlord that will only take 6 months or even a 1 month, it's like finding a diamond, it's tough.
Right. I think that's another reason to work with a realtor or a real estate agent who is going to ideally, and you want to verify this too, act on your behalf to make sure that you have the correct information. When you're talking about food and markets and banks, do you see people looking at like emergency services and healthcare and stuff like that?
Definitely.
And I was one of these people. I was like, I want to move up into the mountains and the woods. And everybody was like, how much do you enjoy being hyper vigilant during fire season? And I was like, oh, it just didn't occur to me.
Yes. Some people, I find the ones who have pre-existing conditions are the ones who check about medical services more. I often see people asking in the expat group, oh, can I find this medication here? Or can I find that? And what do I do if I run out? And then some people, I always find this completely unhelpful. They say, oh, why don't you just plan a trip and go back home? And I'm like, not everybody can afford that, to go back home every 90 days to get a top up on their medication.
Yeah. Wow.
But again, I guess the people who say that can afford it, or at least in their minds, they can afford it, so you have to really look at the kind of services that are available to you. For example, we've got a lot of private clinics here. But what most people don't realize, for example, somebody will choose to go to a fancy private clinic here, thinking that they're going to get better service and everything. But what they don't realize is when there is medical malpractice or they diagnosed you wrong, all that clinic is going to do is dump you in an ambulance and take you over to the government hospital and dump you there because they don't want the body count on their profile.
Yikes. Yeah, that would be a good thing to know, especially because as Americans, we are sort of trained to assume that private healthcare is higher quality than public healthcare. So you need to understand exactly what you're getting and what the restrictions are.
Exactly. Yes. And the bedside manner of doctors are different worldwide, so you're used to that doctor who maybe gives you a hug and you've become so friendly. And over here, they barely, for example, I see with my employees all the time, they go to the hospital because they're not feeling well, and then they come back, and then I ask them, what did the doctor say? And then they have no clue because the doctor basically just scribbled on a piece of paper and told them to go home.
Oh no, that's not great. Yeah.
Yes, because it's that whole culture of I'm above you, in social hierarchy because I'm a doctor. You are not. So whatever I say, you're just going to have to do. I don't have to explain myself to you.
Yeah, it's different. I've noticed that here, medical professionals, I love the fact that they will just tell me straight up, like, you'll be getting a sonogram or a mammogram or whatever. And they're like, nope, you're good. And I'm like, wow, I would have had to wait 6 weeks to find out that in the US. And everyone I've seen has been like super professional, super helpful. But there's sort of this expectation. I think if you tried to like negotiate or have a discussion about your care in the same way you might with an American doctor, I think American doctors are more used to entertaining that kind of discussion, even if they're not thrilled about it. Not the case here. That would be, I think, considered possibly insulting and rude.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's the same here. And something unique, not unique to here, but because people have, had to navigate the government healthcare system here, a lot of them prefer to go to local healers which, especially if you're more into holistic care, that's fantastic. That route is there. And our local healing is quite similar to Ayurvedic practices to some extent, if you find the right healer. So they might mix in some spirituality and everything. So, for example, if you're a staunch Christian, how cool are you when somebody tells you, okay, go to this healer, and they start, praying for you in a very different way? Are you okay with this? What are your religious beliefs? Because I would say it doesn't matter where I'll speak for Ghana and most of Africa, that spirituality, is not what we see in the West. So, how comfortable are you having those conversations and having somebody pray over you or pray over your child before they heal them? So these are little, I think, intricate things about societal change that we need to be aware of.
Yes, I'm glad you brought up spirituality and religion, because I've seen people, even after they've moved here, they might be, if they're Christian or religious, they might be looking for a house of worship. And I'm like, well, you just moved to a country where there's a Catholic church pretty much, within a short walk of wherever you live.
Every corner. Yes.
But other denominations, other faiths are a little more outside like Lisbon and Porto. You may have a more difficult time finding a congregation. And so that might be something that needs, for people who practice, it might be something that they need to take into consideration when they're scouting, instead of assuming that that community will be there for them when they get here.
Definitely. Like, one thing that used to irritate me, in the UAE, was when expats would complain about, oh, the mosque was so loud. But you move to a Muslim country and they're going to have prayer 5 times a day. So instead of saying the mosque was loud, perhaps, listen to the beauty of the adhan, of the prayer. For example, in Istanbul, especially anyone who doesn't enjoy the sound of the Muslim prayer, they shouldn't go to Istanbul, because to me, it was one of the most beautiful sounds, because Istanbul has over 700 mosques. And so when they start, it's like this continuous echo, and it's so gorgeous. But for somebody else, they were like, oh, I can't sleep. They woke me up at 4 a.m. and blah, 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 blah. And you have to have some sensitivity to that. You have to be aware of where you're going. Perhaps it's a Catholic city and you're going to hear the church bells every hour on the hour.
Oh, yes. Every quarter hour where I live. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And they don't realize that after some time, you stop hearing it. It stops being so prominent in your mind. I remember when I moved to Ghana, my wake-up call was this crow at about 3:30 in the morning, and it would just start. And then, after a couple of weeks, I didn't hear it anymore. People need to realize that certain things stop being so important, and you tune them out eventually. Certain cities are noisier than other cities. So when you go on your visit, see how quiet it is. If you're someone who needs that peace and quiet, perhaps you don't need to be in the major city. You need to be on the outskirts.
Absolutely. And find out when their festivals are and what the festival schedules are.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
Because here it's like when the university is bringing in new students or graduating students, the parties run for 6 or 7 days, and the bands start at 11 or midnight, and the last act takes the stage around dawn. And they're loud.
Oh my God.
And, you can't complain about that if you choose to live in that place. That's specifically why I moved to a smaller village, or a smaller town. But what I didn't do was check to see about their festivals. They have a huge festival every July about 2 blocks from my building. And it is loud. It goes till 4 a.m.
Wow.
For about 5 nights in a row. And it's like having a live accordion band next to your head. And I'm like, well, that's on me because I didn't check,
Yeah. And at least you have time to get some noise canceling, headphones for when you sleep, or just go join the party, live a little. Why not join them? Because I think those festivals are really crucial for you to get into the vibe of that area, that city. So join in with your neighbors, and the more that they see you out, the more that you become one with them and you stop being the foreigner.
Exactly.
Over here, there's a term that gets people quite riled up. It's obroni. Obroni is what they call white people traditionally, but they also call people who are foreigners obroni. So they even refer to me as obroni because I sound different, and it's very clear that I wasn't raised here. And so the longer I'm here, the better my tree becomes, the less I hear myself being called obroni. So whenever I'm ready to leave Ghana, I'm like, I achieved something. I'm no longer Obroni. I'm no longer the foreigner. And that's the goal.
Right. The goal is to fit in. Well, I'm still the French lady for some reason.
The French lady.
The French lady. I'll take it. I feel like it's a promotion that I didn't ask for or deserve, but I'm like, yes, please. Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, somehow I'm the French lady, but I would like to eventually just kind of be like the neighbor.
Exactly. I think in a couple of years you probably will be, because there'll be a new French lady, so they'll take that title.
I'll have to pass the French lady crown on to the next newcomer.
Exactly. There's always a newcomer. So
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, Anita, this has been super helpful. So I've been taking notes. So I just want to run through and see what we've got and see if there's anything else.
Mhm.
Okay. So, first of all, be honest with yourself about how you live your day-to-day life. Set your financial priorities, understand the budget where you are now and where you're going to live. Think about your work, which we'll talk more about that in a different episode when we talk about visas and how you qualify.
Mhm.
Think about school fees and where your child might be able to go to school. Look at housing, look at utilities,
Yes.
look at the infrastructure, and understand that it may move differently than what you're used to. Can you be honest with yourself about whether you are willing to put in the time to learn the language so that you can integrate
Mhm.
and succeed? And when you go, pick a vacation rental, check out the market, get on the bus,
Mhm.
go around at night, see how safe you feel. Look for things that might be indicators that it's not as safe as you might like. Meet with a realtor or someone who can help you understand the housing market so that you understand what's legit, what's not, and what you can expect. Look for banks. Look for houses of worship if that's your thing. Look for healthcare.
Yes.
Look for emergency services and have fun with it.
Definitely. And I forgot something really important. If you are a retiree or traveling with a child that may be, may have autism, or maybe, maybe they've suffered hearing loss or anything like that, please take the time to find out the services that are available to you. Because, for example, if you're a retiree, you're up in your years there, please check what happens if you fall ill. What do the nursing homes look like? Can you afford that? If you're planning to never go back to where you're moving from, what do the end of your days look like? All of these things. I know it's a little bit morbid to talk about. I think when we move, there are real consequences to our actions and our decisions. So take your time and flesh it out as much as you can. You're not going to know everything, but make sure the major things are covered so that you don't have to rush back or, sort of go back with your tail between your legs and say, well, I messed up. And also, if you messed up, can you start over? Can you afford to start over? Don't bring all your money with. Keep some wherever you're coming from. So if, God forbid, this didn't work out for you, what do you need to start over again? Make sure you leave that back where you came from so that you always know you can go home. And don't care about people's opinions in that sense, because I've seen a lot of people be naysayers because they are afraid for you. So listen, of course, to your friends and family because they do care about you. But at the end of the day, you know how much you can take and what is non-negotiable. So be very clear on that. And if you go and it's not for you, it's okay to say, well, let me save up and go check out the next place. You don't have to stay where you currently are forever.
And that all kind of ties back into your first point, which is be honest with yourself. You have to be honest about, we all become frail. No one yet has cracked the code on immortality. So you have to be honest with yourself about those things, and be honest with yourself if it's not working out, so that you can free up the energy to do something else.
That's it.
Thank you so much. This is going to be super helpful for everyone who I think is trying to figure out the best way to approach a scouting trip. And I will put some links in the show notes so that people can see La Casa and your travel agency. And thank you again so much for taking time out of what I know is an extremely busy schedule to have this conversation with us. Thank you so much, Anita.
Oh, my pleasure, Casey. This has been wonderful speaking with you.
All right. Thanks so much. That's all for now. Thanks for listening to We're Moving to Europe, a podcast for Americans who are curious and or serious about relocating to a European country. For more resources and to join the conversation, find us on Substack at We're Moving to Europe.